part of SO 304 course, social work at the group and community level. And this is also my trial lecture. So today I decided to talk about family group conference. In Norwegian, it's well known as the term familiero. And I would like to talk a little bit about how this model or service can operate as a group community approach in social work practice. So today's lecture will be divided into three parts. First, I will say a few words about the origins, principles, and processes of family group conferences. Also in English, we use the short term FGC, so it's the same thing, family group conference or familiero. Then I will say about some conceptual and practical notes of family group conference in terms of child protection, group and community social work. And then to provide information about family group conference implementation in Norway. As I said already, and especially in my first session for the students of this course, we have different kind of groups in social work practice. So I mentioned that we have recreational groups, self-help groups, educational groups, task groups, treatment groups, but also problem-solving and decision-making group. And then I mentioned that family group conference can be a very good example for that. So this is why I decided to go a little bit more into depth kind of explanation about this model, even though the students from this course probably have heard something about family group conference, because I know and in second year there has been already some lectures about this topic. So what is family group conference? Familiar road. I mean, there's maybe not unique definition, but here I found one that's, I think, really expressed nicely how we understand the family group conference. It is a mediated formal meeting between all family members, state officials like social workers, police, teachers, and other people who are involved with the family network. And they come together in this formal meeting to establish a family plan for the care and protection of individual family members. In this case, it could be like child or adolescent person. So here, the point is that in family group conference, they're not just primary family members included. There are also a wider group members or family members included, like aunts, uncles, grandparents. Maybe in these meetings we can invite some friends to come, maybe neighbor, but we also invite some other professionals who can be of big and very important help for the family. Also important about the family group conference is that it is unique because it is facilitated, these meetings, by independent coordinator. So I think maybe in Norwegian you will say facilitator, but usually in the terms we use independent coordinators of the family group conference terms. So this is a person who is coming from outside. That person is not coming from social welfare field. Usually this person is coming from the community, and in many countries independent coordinators are volunteers, people from the community who have interest in helping the families and who get some certain kind of training to be independent coordinator of the family group conference. Also, I think it's important to understand that family group conference or familiero became a very important international model, service or approach in social work practice. How this has been developed, how family group conference actually has started. Well, everything started quite a long time ago. There was a certain issues in New Zealand in 1980s. And the welfare system, public welfare system, was really trying to see what's happening in the families of Maori population. And many children from the Maori population, they were taken away from their families. And the families were not happy with this situation. And they said, let's try to see if we can do something in our own way, because in our kind of culture, we have these meetings where we invite all family members to come and to discuss about certain problems. And they started implementing this kind of approach, and it showed very interesting results. So 1989, in New Zealand, they decided to integrate this approach and to call it family group conference in the law for the children, young and persons and families. And it started to be the part of social work practice in New Zealand. However, this model or approach or service has started to spread across the world very quickly. So it also brought from New Zealand to Europe in 90s and 2000s. So in many European countries, family group conference has become a very important segment in the first in child protection, most likely and most importantly, but also it's been increasing in some other parts of social work practice. So family group conference now has been implemented in many different countries like the UK, Norway, Sweden, Italy, the Netherlands, Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina. But what is really important is that the Netherlands organization is one of the most important organizations at European level, which is responsible to translate this model or this approach to other countries. And over the years, in social work practice, especially in the child protection field, there have been established and developed some new kind of models or services, which is like child protection conferences, juvenile case conference, family mediation, restorative justice. But all these models, they actually have foundation in the family group conference. So they operate in quite kind of similar ways, but the main mechanisms, the way how it operates, it came from the family group conference model. Here we can see this is a European network of family group conference. So there exists this big network for the more than 20 years. And every year they meet together, quite a big group of 50 people who might be social workers, sometimes service users, independent coordinators, organizations which implement family group conferences. And they meet together every year to discuss about family group conference, the implementation, the challenges, how it can be transferred to some other countries or to some other fields. So as I already said, the family group conference as a model, it started first in the child protection field, but over the years it's spread to other fields of social work practice. So here we can see all these colorful countries where the family group conference have been implemented. The white countries, they're still not familiar with this model. And what's really interesting that in many other countries, even though the primary is being focused on child protection field, we can see that, for instance, in the UK, they use family group conference in work with the prisoners when they need to be discharged from the prison. They have to create this kind of plan for the integration society. They also use in Italy and also in Bosnia and Herzegovina in school settings. So for school social workers, it's been implemented in work with the children who might be having some problems with school issues, maybe bullying behavior or similar situation. Also in the Netherlands, they have a lot of experience in domestic violence cases. So there are a lot of different kind of things where family group conference can be implemented in social work practice. What this model actually brought to the to social work practice? Well, first, I think the most importantly, it changed the paradigm, because usually citizens are not expected and almost never asked to resolve their own conflicts on their own by trying to find the solutions by themselves, because they usually have to wait for the public welfare system to get involved and to assess the risk and to try and make certain steps. Here, it's changed this paradigm, because family group conference says that the family has its resources and also that might have certain power to try to find solutions for their problems. And here we don't say that social workers or professionals are those who knows the best for the family, but actually it's kind of different picture, where family could be really someone that can change the whole process. So with the family group conference, we are actually returning back the issue where it started. We're returning back to the family situation. So it's also the family-led process. Usually family is the whole responsible, have the ownership of implementing the family group conference. And also important to say that family plan is something that they develop. So it's not being forced by the public institution, or it's not being forced by the social workers, some kind of plan that maybe the family members will not use or implement. This is coming actually from the family process. And here we can see that by using family group conference, it's happening from intervention to empower the family extended network to find solutions and to find the problems. Here I show some illustration. I think it's very nice to explain how the family group conference affects family members on one side and professional members on the other side. So on the my left side here, we see family members who get involved in the family group conference, who actually finally being recognized. Their feelings have been recognized. Their emotions, all that has been said in the families have been recognized, identified during this meeting. We also have an opportunity for the family to be empowered, but also to work in partnership with social services, which is very, very important. On the other hand, on my right side, we have professional experiences, because social workers or other professionals are involved in the family group conference, but more like informators. They're just there to provide certain information. They don't lead the whole process. So very often, I remember when I used to work with the professionals who implemented family group conference, they said it helped them a lot to finally recognize what's really happening in that family, or what's really happening in the situation of certain child. I remember when I used to work in social work, with social work professionals who have been working in school settings, they would usually don't have so much information what's really going on in child life or in children's life. And they said when they had this family group conference meeting, it really helped them to understand the family dynamics and to understand the family situation. And it helped them to work and to develop better partnership with the families in order to help the child, but also to bring the social work perspectives, because during the meetings, they have a chance to present certain perspectives from the social work practice. So here, we see that family group conference process can strengthen emotional capacities of family members. They can also give a much better focus on the child and child needs, because in this model, the child perspective is very important. And it provides a chance for a child to be heard, which is really quite unique experience. It involves the child as well as other family members in making a decision for finding solutions for their own problems. And more importantly, they create a very realistic kind of plan how to help to resolve some situation. So as we can see, there are certain personal but also professional outcomes of the implementation of family group conference in the social work practice. Important also to understand that family group conference has its foundation in the Convention of the Rights of the Child, because Convention of the Rights of the Child said there are a lot of important elements that should be implemented, like that children should have a chance to participate in making decisions, which are usually refers to their situation. They should be also able to express themselves, express their opinions and feelings, but also it should help public institution and public welfare sector to provide preventive services for the child at the early age. So family group conference really is very closely connected with the Convention of the Rights of the Child. On the other hand, we have this idea of child participation, and this is a concept that becomes more and more important, not just in social work, but also at Europe level, because the Council of Europe, as well as European Commission, they started with this idea of improving child participation at European level. So they came up with a lot of new kind of strategy and actions in order to improve child participation across the Europe. In terms of the law, I think this is also very closely connected with barneloven that you have here in Norway, and especially with Chapter 3, which has been talking about preventive activities and collaborations among different actors, but also with the Chapter 4, which have been talking about individual plans. That's very important to be created when we have a child engaged in social work practice, especially in child protection, and also elements in relation to consideration of the child's best interests. Also, there another important, is everything all right? Yeah? So we have another important element because family group conference is connected with this model of child protection and different services that have been provided in social work practice. So this is Hardiker model, which has 4 kind of levels. So that we can integrate family group conference in the first 2 levels. Level 1, where it's connected with universal preventive services for the children and the families, and also level 2 when it comes to providing support, intervention services for children and families in need. Here, I think this is very nicely explained, this picture that usually when we work in social work practice or when we work as social workers in different professional settings, we can see just a basic kind of aspects of the family dynamics. Maybe about the language, or maybe how the family reacts and what kind of roles do they have. But a lot of more important things, it's not so visible for us as professionals. So we have to dig in. We have to work with the family members to understand what's really happening there and what kind of underlying issues going on so that we can know what kind of interventions we can provide to them. So there are a lot of elements that in our work we don't see, like family roles, ideas about the family values, biases, relation to authorities, beliefs, children experiences, different kind of elements, gender roles that are very important for every family. So family group conference really helps us to figure out these kind of things, to bring this to the surface, because families know themselves best. And I like this sentence quite a lot. What are the values of family group conference? Well, first, persons have rights to maintain their kinship and cultural connections through their lives. Every person, particularly children and vulnerable adults, has the right to participate and be supported, to have their voice heard in decisions about them. Individuals belong to wider family and the community systems that both nurture them and carry responsibility for them. The state has responsibility to recognize, support, and build the family group's capacity to protect and care for its members. And family groups know their own histories, and they use this information to mobilize their capacities and their resources. So as I said, family group conference can be applied in case to child protection or in relation to children issues, and there are different kind of situations where the family group conference as a model or service can be implemented. I listed just a few of them here, like providing support to the family parents where the parent is unable to independently take care of the children, the children who might be under guardianship, the children who might have problems at school, the children who are in foster care. So there are a lot of kind of situations where the family group conference can be implemented in terms to children issues. Also, at the same time, we can implement family group conference in adult social work practice. So also I listed a few examples where it can be implemented. And yeah, I think this could also be very interesting to see how the family group conference have been exploring and being integrated in the different elements of social work. However, I think it's also very important to understand that the family group conference has a very strong theoretical framework. So first, when we talk about this model or about service, we can connect it with the theory of the crisis intervention and the general system theory, because it really helps to understand how the family in certain crisis situation can mobilize its own resources and find solutions for their own problems. Also, in terms of the social ecological model, which is quite well known in social work practice, we look at the child that has been located in the center of this model and how the child situation is affected by the micro, meso, and macro level. So in family group conference, we actually include more these micro and meso levels, which I will show in another slide. Because this can also have a very important role to provide support and help to the child or to the adolescent when we implement family group conference with them. On the other hand, the concept of service users' involvement and participation becomes more and more important, where we need to provide a space for service users to express themselves and to express their experiences, and to participate actively in making decisions about themselves. So the family group conference is very closely connected with this concept of participation and users' involvement. On the other hand, we have a strength-based approach, and this is an approach which is relying on their own capacities and recognition, the service users, of their own resources to resolve the difficulties or adverse conditions. So they're looking at the strengths they can find, and during the meeting, that's the main point. They're trying to see what kind of elements they can use in their surroundings, but also within their families in order to improve their own situation. And I think network theory is very also interesting theory that we can use here for the family group conference to understanding actually the elements of the family group conference, because during the meeting, and especially during the preparation of meeting, we have a lot of the coordination and cooperation between different participants, broader family networks, social networks, professionals, as well as different kind of organizations and institutions that got involved. So here, as I already said, this is the slide that I mentioned. We have a child where it's on the center of our interests. And around the child, there are a lot of different kind of elements that are included, like neighbors and church or friends and peers or culture groups, but also maybe local governments or sports clubs or childcare, which have very important elements for the child. Can we just after, is it okay? Or something? Yeah, exactly. But family group conference also have certain group elements. So because this is the course we're talking about the groups and about communities, we have to understand that this model applies group work and the community principles. This also meeting goes through different kind of stages that I will present now. And independent coordinators are group leaders, and they can apply different kind of leadership that we discussed during this course. In terms of group stages, or in terms of the stages that the family group conference have been implemented, are here presented. So we start first with the referral. Social workers might refer a case or child or case to us that we need to organize family group conference for this family or for this child. And then independent coordinator is usually selected from the community, is someone, as already said, who has been trained to be independent coordinator. And then we start with preparation. And during this course, we had this, I was also already talking about how important it is for the preparation when we work with different kind of groups. The same thing is happening here. We have the preparation element that is very important because we have to talk with the family members. We have to see how much they're open to communicate, whether they want to be the part of this meeting. We have to contact different family members from extended network to invite them to be the part of this meeting. We also have to discuss with professionals who might be of importance for the family to come to the meeting and to present certain elements from their professional side. So the preparation stage, I think, is the most important in the family group conference in order to be implemented well. Then when everything is in place, we have the meeting, we have the conference. And this is the heart element of the meeting. And this part has 3 stages. The first one is information giving, the second stage is private family time, and the third element is plan presented and agreed. So what's really happening is when you have the family group conference, when the family and the others are there in the meeting, then professionals who come to the meeting, they just present certain information. We first present the information why the family group conference has been organized, what's really happening there, why it's so important to have it, and then professionals provide some kind of perspectives from their side of view. Then in the second stage, there is a private family time, and this is a time where only family members are included, no professionals are there. So this provides an opportunity for the family members to create kind of plan that really will work for them in order to resolve a certain problem because of the conference was organized about. And I remember the family private time can last really, it depends on the situation. And I remember I used to work also because I have experience in implementing the family group conference, and we used to work with one family group. It was around 20 of people who participated, very quite big group. They were a very extensive family network group, and it lasted more than 4 hours, this family meeting, because there were a lot of discussions happening there, a lot of confrontation. Everything that we already discussed about group dynamics, we can find especially during the private family time, but also during the whole family group conference meeting. And then after that, family present this plan to each others, but also they present this plan to professionals or to social worker who lead their case study, the case. And what's really happening after the family group conference finish is reviewing the plan and monitoring whether the plan has been implemented in the practice. And social workers usually will check it out, how the plan has been implemented, whether there has been some kind of problems happening there, and maybe provide additional support in order to implement the family plan in the best possible way. In terms of Norway, I would like to say a few words how Family Group Conference came here. Well, everything started in 1994. There was a big kind of welfare congress in Trondheim that year when this model was for the first time presented by one scholar from England. Then in the 1990s, there was a lot of investment in different kind of methods within child welfare in Norway, like testing the new kind of approaches and models in child welfare. And in 1998, the Ministry of Children and the Family Affairs granted funds for national projects to test family group conferencing in Norwegian child welfare. We can see also in the time between 2002 and 2006, there happened also the evaluation of the testing phase of the family group conference in Norwegian child welfare. And this evaluation actually was initiated in 54 local communities, and it was financed by the Ministry of Children and Family Affairs. Also 2003, the new law concerning child welfare service was revised in Norway, and it was said at that time that children from the age of 7 should be allowed to give their opinion and be consulted about the matters that concerns them. And as I said, this was in line with the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. So because of all these reasons, Family Group Conference has started to be quite a model that has been quite implemented in the Norwegian child protection field. And there's almost like more than 20 years of experiences of FGC, this model here in Norway. Bufdir is responsible a lot for the family group conferences, and on the website of the Bufdir you can find a lot of information and a lot of documents and evaluations about the family group conference, how effective it is, how it works, what kind of results this model or this service has been happened in different social welfare and social work practices. So my suggestion, especially for students, if you want to find more about the family group conference and the implementation, please go to both their website, and there is this kind of library where you can find a lot of really very important information about this model. In addition, Bufdir also not just do research about this model, but it also provides some very interesting, informative kind of flyers or information for the families in different languages. So you can find really interesting flyers that have been provided, not just in Norwegian, but in many other languages for people who have been living in Norway, but maybe they are not familiar with so much with Norwegian or not confident with the Norwegian language, which help them also to understand what is family group conference and how it can be beneficial for them. And what is really interesting also that very often independent coordinator might come from the background of the same background as the family has. So it also might be very helpful for the family group conference to be implemented for those families who maybe not have been familiar or not have a strong competences when it comes to Norwegian language. It is also very important to point out that family group conference has been quite well researched, and I think it's one of the most well researched models in social work practice, especially in terms of the child protection. But here I brought just two examples of articles, research articles, which have been focused on the Norwegian cases. It's been written in English, but also you can find some articles in Norwegian which look at different elements of the family group conference implementation here in Norway. So I think it can be also very interesting for students to find out a little bit more about some longer term effects of this model in terms of social work practice in the Norwegian context. However, important to realize that even though it seems like this is a fantastic model that solves the whole issues and problems, there are certain challenges and limitations. So in the recent years, we have more and more researchers who decided to conduct the evaluation of the family group conference. And there have been coming up some news in the media whether the family group conference might provide some kind of weak evidence that it's really working, that's really affecting. And this was actually arise a lot of questions. What's really interesting is about this evaluation that have been conducted about the family group conference. They usually use randomized controlled trial as a model of evaluation of social programs. And there are a lot of different opinions whether the randomized controlled trial can be a really effective way to test and evaluate the model and whether to show its own effectiveness. So I just want to explain here that even though the things might be very effective, and we who works with implementation of family group conference, we see a lot of positive elements. There are also another perspective that exists, which might be a little bit skeptical about the effects of the family group conference in terms of the results and the effects they produce in terms of service users' help. If you would be more interested about this, of course, you can, especially for students, they can contact me and I can deliver some kind of text and information and evaluation of the family group conference that has been examined and maybe that has been criticized in some kind of way, this model for social work practice. So there are some fears about FGCs. First, that not all service users have family network or one that is safe. a family will not be able to come up with a plan, which might be also one challenge. The family will argue and fight with each other during the meeting. This is going to probably happen sometimes because situation is never perfect. Family might not have resources that we expect that they could have in their networks, and also there is this kind of cost, how much it will cost the family group conference, because what is really interesting, family group conference here in Norway, they have been funded by the state budget, but in many other countries this model has been delivered by the third sector organizations or by the civil society organizations as like kind of outsourcing project where the cooperation and co-production is happening between public sector and the civil society sector. So the funding might be also always the issue, especially about paying the volunteers who might be engaged in the family group conference as independent coordinators, and keep the whole model sustainable in the social work practice. I also had a chance to conduct the evaluation of the family group conference in the country where I'm coming from. So here I just put the link if you want to find out more. But I evaluated 159 completed family group conferences. And then I just want to quickly show you what kind of results I found out during this evaluation. I was interested in how this plan has been created and whether this family plan that family come up with, how it's been implemented in the practice. So we asked the members how much they've been satisfied with the family group conference, and mostly of them, they have been satisfied 75% fully and partially 25%. I also want to ask them and to know on the scale of 1 to 5 how this assessment of family group plan has been adopted. And we can see that a high proportion of respondents believe that the plan is most successfully implemented, while some have like 35% that they said that it was very well implemented, and 10% of family explained that they were well implemented. There were no families that said that family plan was not implemented. So it can be implemented in the practice, but it can also face certain changes because of situation of lives of the group, of the family members can change along the way. I also want to know, has the adopted plan been respected? And we can see that 90% of them, yes. So from this, it can be concluded that the change of plan occurred in small number of families, and the change was just partially. I also wanted to ask the family members how satisfied they were with people who were there, especially from the social work side, from the social protection field, in terms of monitoring the family plan. And they said that 85%, mostly they were quite satisfied by social workers, how they were dealing with the family, monitoring the family plans after the family group conference. And there's another slide where I asked whether there has been a change of plan adopted on the family group conference. So we can see that most kind of family members, they didn't have certain changes of the plan, but some changes partially happened here and there because of different reasons that might affected family members. And the most frequent domain in the family plans for children and youth has been implemented in the case of upbringing, household problems, educational problems with children, free time, financial situation that family might face, health issues of the child, but health issues of the family and parents, for example, justice, social contacts, especially when it comes to divorced families. So we can see from this slide that family group conference as a model can be really implemented in different case studies of child protection. So FGC's family group conference works, at least that's from my personal experience, and that family is difficult to gather. We know that as social workers when we work with them and when we suggest to families to maybe be the part of this meeting and organize this group conference, they may not always be so much open for that, because in many families there is no habit of talking about the problems, and that can be connected with the family backgrounds, with cultural backgrounds, etc. But what we also can see, especially who have experience to implement family group conference, is that when those family members come together, even though they maybe were not so much open for this at the very beginning, they recognize during this meeting their strengths. They recognize the coordination of their resources, and what is really interesting, they are capable of making the plan that works for them. However, most importantly, to understand that it is not easy for the family members to participate in the family group conference. We can just put ourselves in their shoes. If someone would come to us and suggest, do you want to come and organize the family group meeting for you, for your problem, and where you have to share your issues with the other members, it could be a little bit tricky and not very easy for us. So this is important to understand, that it takes time to implement this model, but most importantly, I think the planning phase is the crucial thing. If we plan pretty well, if we really organize everything in a good way, and if we have a good context with family members and communicate with professionals, then we can expect maybe that this is going to work out. So the planning phase, as in every situation, when we have a group work and when we work in the community level, it becomes very important segment for the implementation of the family group conference. So I would like to finish this with some literature that I used here. As I said, there are a lot of really different kind of resources that can be found online in terms of the family group conference model and approach. And I invite students to check out this literature because it can be very useful. And maybe some of you might be interested, for example, to write about the family group conference for your exam or maybe for your thesis, especially maybe some of you who have experience during the practice, because as we know, family group conference has been implemented here in Norway in the child protection field. So maybe some students during the practice, they had a chance to participate or at least to maybe heard something about this model. So this could be one of idea. If you would like to explore more for your exams, this group work and the community work, maybe to write a little bit more about the family group conference.